Jesus taught his followers to pray that God's will would be done on earth as it is in heaven. If we really meant that, how different would our actions be? Are we blessing the earth or destroying it? Modern science and ancient Celtic Christianity both suggest a better way of being, exercising an ethic of stewardship, not dominion. Join us for On Earth as It Is in Heaven, a provocative 7-week Darkwood Brew series exploring our home, our faith, and what it means when they converge.
Welcome to Darkwood Brew, where ancient Christian mystical practices are blended with modern interactive web technology, some arts, some world-class jazz, and well, you never know what's going to happen here at Darkwood Brew. So we welcome you with us as we start a whole new series tonight on Earth as It Is in Heaven. Are we, in fact, being a blessing to the world? We'll have 7 weeks to discuss that issue. And we hope that you'll be following with us. We have all kinds of comments coming up about environmental concerns, about how we fit into the whole of creation, how the light of God speaks to us and acts within us and keeps us moving as a part of a relationship in creation. And this will be a whole series about how we can participate and act that out in the world in a new way of being in the world as we look at creation from a little bit different perspective. And part of that different perspective is coming from the Celtic spirituality. We have as a companion with us this series a book called The Book of Creation by J. Philip Newell, who takes a look at the creation story in Genesis 1 as a day-by-day creation. And as he works through that day by day as a devotional, he talks about some of the themes that Celtic spirituality brings with it to our discussion. So I hope that you might be able to grab a hold of that book somehow. You can order that through Amazon, right through our Darkwood Brew website if you'd like, as a companion with you along the way for our discussions. Also, we have the whole text of Genesis 1, the 7 days of creation that we'll be studying through our Pneuma this series for this 7 weeks. And we'll study each day and see how God is revealed in each day of creation and how that speaks to us on how we can engage in creation as humans that are part of the whole of creation. Also in this series we have some bloggers that are with us. We want to take the time to thank all of the bloggers who are continuing with us from our last series. Marianne Folkert, who is right here in Omaha from Countryside Community Church, is going to continue with us. Reverend Ian Lynch from Brimfield, Massachusetts. He's a UCC pastor there. He'll continue on with us. Cynthia Astle come from us from way down in Texas to be with us again. And Leslie Merle, our blogger here from Omaha, will be with us. And joining them is Reverend Dr. Scott Frederickson, who is an ELCA pastor and a seminary professor. And he's also pinch hitting tonight as our administrator on the chat room. So be sure and say hi to him as well. And check out those blogs as we continue on these 7 weeks of discussion, because there's lots of good conversation that happens in those blogs, and you'll have a chance to comment and carry on ongoing conversations with each of our bloggers. We'd also like to take this time to shout out to Amy Blanchard, who is our regular floor manager here for Darkwood Brew. And I think in the 2¼ years that we've been on the air, Amy has never missed a show. And tonight, she is. So we'd like to say hi to her wherever she is, and we'd like to give Pat Gomez a little shout out, because she is somebody who usually plays in the background for us, but she's acting as our floor manager tonight. So thanks all of you. And last but not least is our Skype guest for tonight. We're really looking forward to this conversation, because I can think of no better person to be with us to help us kick off a series. Can you guess who that might be? There we go, Eric Elnes. Yay! Eric Elnes is on study leave, getting ready as an extension of this series, writing some stuff, doing some research, and preparing to take us even further into this discussion as we go. So he is going to join us from his study leave tonight in Bend, Oregon. And we're looking forward to the conversation about Celtic spirituality, Genesis 1, and wherever he may take us. So thanks, Eric, for being with us, and we'll be back with you right after we get some highlights from our last series, as well as looking for a new partner in this series and how we can partner with them. We'll be right back.
It hit me. I could have this antibody in the network of carbon nanotubes such that this network reacted only to this one protein, mesothelin, and changed its electrical properties based on the amount of that protein present. I was pretty sure I had found a new way to attack pancreatic cancer.
We found so many ways to stave off death, which is a natural process of our lives, and yet we're not extending life so much as avoiding death.
Brother Moses wasn't born to settle down. Brother Moses wasn't born to settle down, settle down. He was born to rise.
To the degree that each of us incarnates that seed of divinity, that seed of commitment to living in integrity and being of service to the future and to the well-being of the larger body of life, we actually participate in the second coming of Christ.
Humanity is really just a blip. Just, we're latecomers on the scene. We haven't been here very long. We're enmeshed in all of these interconnections. And so I think this is really one of those places where faith and science there's conflict.
We have to reach beyond what we do now. And I think not only reach now into science, but reach beyond into the kind of religion-science dialogue as a reach beyond what the scientists are doing. It certainly speaks something about the relationships that we have as human beings to each other.
The expansion of scientific knowledge for you made God smaller?
Absolutely not. It makes the whole thing more awesome. And I would personally welcome the discovery of, cosmic brothers and sisters out there, so to speak. And I wouldn't want to place any assumptions on how God may relate to them.
that they have going are the ones that you saw in the video just there. The first is 1 million hours of environmental earth care that they're trying to do within the 50 days of this Easter season. So anything that you do that's environmentally concerned is something that can be counted as those hours, and they're tracking all of these things on their website, www.ucc.org. You can get on their website, find all about 4-1 Earth and the process that they'll be going through and how we're partnering with them. Another goal that they're trying to reach is 100,000 trees that will be planted during this 50-day season, as well as writing over 100,000 letters of environmental advocacy to your newspapers, your church newsletters, and to your politicians in your area that might make some difference in what's happening in our environmental crisis. We're celebrating Easter, Arbor Day, Earth Day, and Pentecost, all within this 50-day celebration. And this is a great way for us to partner with this group. The UCC has been a wonderful partner with us throughout Darkwood Brew, and now we get a chance to partner with them. And so we're very excited to be a part of this. Let us know how you're participating and get in on the website for the UCC and let them know how you're participating. And we'll report on those activities as we move through this series for the next 7 weeks. Also know that this series is a little bit different for us in a format way. We're going to take some time to spend a little bit more time each week with our Pneuma Divina and our scripture text. We're trying to get at a point where we can spend some time to listen for the Spirit and have the Spirit dwell with us in these scripture verses. So we're going to do a little bit different format with Pneuma Divina, but one of the things we'd like to ask you now is to formulate a question in your mind. Formulate a question that may have been nagging at you, may need some special meaning for you, or a special insight for you that you'd like to hear. And as we go about our Pneuma Divina a little bit later in the episode, you can hold that question up with the text and see how they speak to one another and see how the Spirit moves through this dwelling in the Word. But now, right now, we hope to dig a little bit deeper into the content of the stewardship of the earth with our Skype guest, Eric Elnes. Welcome, Eric.
It's good to be with you.
How are you?
I'm doing very, very well, thanks. Good to see you guys again.
It's a little bit different seeing you on the other side of the screen this time, huh?
It's wild, having never been a guest before. I found myself, like, this morning, like, getting nervous. It's like, oh my gosh, will I be any good or will I totally suck? All this, so I'm trying to...
Well, you've got some high-tech equipment behind you there. Where are you and what are you doing?
Well, I'm actually coming to you from Bend, Oregon, from Flick 5 Studios. Here, I'll see if I can give you a view of it. This is, well, first of all, here's my brother, Scott Elnes.
Hi, Scott.
He's with Flick 5 here, and we're in the kind of the programming room. There's a green room behind me where they just filmed the other day a bunch of people who are associated with Oregon Adaptive Sports, which are people who have been physically disabled in one form or another, who then like ski down mountains like Mount Bachelor, having had a stroke and on one leg and things like this. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
we've got J. Philip Newell, who's helping us work through this series together. And how is he going to be connected to our Skype guests and video performance here?
Yeah, well, he's a hard person to pin down because he travels throughout the world. I had to kind of catch him in between being in Glasgow, Scotland, and or Edinburgh rather, and India, but. He wasn't able to make it live on any of the Darkwood Brew episodes, but he did graciously agree to consent to an extended interview. So we'll tape an interview with him and then play some of the highlights from that at Darkwood Brew. So Wonderful. Hopefully we'll for a little bit in multiple episodes rather than just once.
Well, his book that we're using as a companion to the series is subtitled An Introduction to Celtic Spirituality. Can you tell us how Celtic spirituality plays in with this environmental concern for creation?
Sure, yeah, and I'll say up front that Celtic spirituality was something that I was initially pretty skeptical of, mostly because of the way it's been popularized in culture. It always seemed a bit kind of touchy-feely, way overly romanticized, new agey kind of, God and the unicorns or something.
Leprechauns.
Yeah, leprechauns, that's right. But then I was really exposed to Celtic Christianity through the works of folks like John O'Donohue, the poet David White, and J. Philip Newell, and realized, oh my gosh, there's a whole lot of depth here that I had no clue of. Of course, I was kind of set up to not appreciate the Celtic Christian tradition in seminary, as most seminarians are, because one of the origins, one of the founding fathers, so to speak, of Celtic Christianity was Pelagius, who we were all taught in seminary, lost the argument with Augustine about free will and the goodness of humankind, and was banished as a heretic after that. But in recent years, for a long time, the writings of Pelagius were simply handed down through his enemies. But in recent years, we've recovered more of the literature there, and there's been quite a turning. But basically, we don't need to get into Pelagius and Augustine, but really the heart of the heart, I think, of what attracted us to at least explore and kind of come in and out of Celtic spirituality in this series is the basic insight that was articulated actually by the founder of the Iona community, George MacLeod, years ago, which is simply this: matter matters. Matter matters.
Matter matters.
Yeah. And, you think about this experientially. All of us have this innate set, deep in our intuitive selves, that something is profoundly wonderful and right with the world. And then there's this deep longing that we have that something is profoundly disconnected as well. And various religious streams, and even streams within religious traditions, have answered that dichotomy in different ways. The Gnostics, said, well, the reason why something feels wrong within us and so much rightness is because we were spirit beings that were trapped in this material realm, which was created by an evil God, and that all of matter is evil. And Christianity was influenced by the Gnostic tradition in its early times, but never quite became Gnostic, thank goodness, in that respect. But the dominant tradition really answered that question of the wrongness we feel alongside the rightness by also acknowledging that we're separated from God, like the Gnostics did, by the material matter. But they explained that wasn't the way it was meant to be. That we did something wrong. Go back to Augustine and original sin. That created that sense of wrongness. It's that separation which was caused by our sin. But there was another dominant stream, or not dominant, a minority report actually within Christianity. The Celtic stream is only part of that. It also included the church in South India and the church in northern Ethiopia, both very early strands of Christianity, where Christianity has been since at least the 4th century. In fact, even in India, down back to perhaps even the beginnings with the Apostle Thomas. But bottom line is, those traditions actually said, well, no, spirit and matter are woven out of whole cloth. There isn't this as rigid a separation as we think, and that separation is actually a good thing. It was part of God's intention for the world. And so it's that feeling of wrongness that you have, or that sense that something's not quite, that longing that we have for God, that sense that we're separate, is not because we've done something wrong or because matter is evil, but it's because of the creative relationship God has established with us in this realm that is perfectly right and normal. So a really easy way to to basically encapsulate 500 years of Celtic thinking would come in the form of a recent revelation to us about the Higgs boson particle. The Celts weren't tuned to the Higgs boson particle in quantum mechanics.
Well, they had Stonehenge, though.
Yeah, that's right. They found it. That's right. That was really a particle accelerator. But they recently confirmed the existence of this particle, which proves that energy precedes matter, that all of matter actually comes from pure energy. And the Christian tradition has always had the hunch that the source of all is love, this energy of love. And if you were to actually just posit, and I'm not trying to make a scientific claim here, but a poetic claim at least, that love is what precedes all of matter, you basically have the essence of Celtic Christian spirituality. That everything we see around us is the product of love, that all of the material universe is love expressing itself in infinite dimensions and ways. So potentially then, like in the modern world, we've lost so much touch with that that, we've lost a sense of the beauty of creation. And, when we lose a sense of the beauty of creation, we lose a fundamental insight that the Celtic Christians were always trying to point us to, and moderns such as David White and John O'Donohue and so forth, that creation itself is always trying to speak to us, to reveal itself to us, yet in its own voice.
So that's why we're comparing Celtic spirituality alongside Genesis 1 in the creation account there.
Yes, exactly. That we don't have to take Genesis 1 as some scientific account of how things happened, but rather Genesis 1 is part of that deep intuitive structure of our faith tradition, which is really talking about how God self-discloses God's very self as love in the world, and how we are then related to God and each other and to the earth in that loving relationship. So, yeah, the Genesis 1 is a pretty fascinating text when it comes to the Celtic Christian tradition, as well as the rest of us. But that basic insight of Celtic Christianity, that this is all good, that the creation is really coming from God's essence, is really what we find in Genesis 1, but we've forgotten. Genesis 1, we tend to think, okay, God created the heavens and the earth. There's creatio ex nihilo, created the heavens and the earth and everything around out of nothing. But go look at Genesis 1 and find what nothingness creation came from. You're hard-pressed to find any nothingness in Genesis 1. It talks about even before God says, let there be light, which is the only element, actually, you could argue, that came anywhere close to creatio ex nihilo. If you look at even before that, it says, when God began to make the heavens and the earth, that, the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. And the spirit or wind from God, was hovering over the face of the deep. So you have this watery chaos, this kind of the raw stuff, the material of creation already there. And then if you look at Genesis 1 and read the whole chapter, the 6 days of creation, then into Genesis 2, the seventh day, that creation has more to do with ordering and arrangement of something that is already there than creating something out of nothing. Now, why is that important? Well, think about, where do you come from? If all this comes from nothing, then it has no intrinsic meaning or value. Its origin is nothingness. But if it comes from something, and that something is God's very essence, well, then everything has meaning and value. And if you look if you go through Genesis 1, you look at every day of creation, and God is constantly is arranging things, is setting things, is forming the dome to separate the waters from below from the waters above, and then causing further separation of the waters from the land, and putting the lights in the sky in order to arrange them into seasons and signs for the festivals and so forth. It's all about arrangement and then empowerment of the creation. God isn't simply the one who's saying, let there be cows. God is actually saying, let the earth produce land creatures. Let the seas produce sea creatures. Let the earth produce vegetation. 3 times God is actually empowering creation to further create. And then God is stepping into creation and saying to the creation that creation has already created, be fruitful and multiply, and you create. So God is empowering entities to be creators, and then further empowering the creation of those entities to further create and differentiate themselves. So you have this incredibly natural, organic process going on of separation, setting in order, and most importantly, setting into relationship. So each of these, what creation is really doing is setting into relationship multiple entities that are mutually dependent upon each other and in fruitful ways that promote life.
Now, how then are they dependent on the Creator itself? If the Creator has the world producing itself or creating itself as it continually unfolds, where's the relationship with the Creator continually?
Well, I think that in Celtic Christianity, that's the spirituality would say actually our dependence goes back even before our creation. That that primordial, if we're going to use Genesis, the poetic imagination of Genesis 1, kind of inform our thinking. It would say that even that primordial stuff out of which God arranges everything is God's essence. And so we're hardwired and not just us, but everything around us is hardwired in some way. And that sense of separation we have between ourselves and each other, between ourselves and nature, is not so because we've done something wrong. It's because you need an other in order to have a relationship with another. And if love is something that seeks relationship, love demands that there be an other. We can't have an other if we're all one. So if you think about creation being completely bound up in love, what you have then is creation is really more about relationship than it is about kind of this divine fiat from on high. Let there be X, Y, and Z, and there is X, Y, and Z.
Okay. Now, in this creation story, there's a specific order of a 7-day structure of the story, and I recently read an article that you wrote from Horizon Journal about the comparison between that 7-day structure of creation and the building of the tabernacle. Can you tell me something about that relationship and how that works?
Sure. Yeah. The story of our origin in Genesis 1 itself has an origin. It was written by a writer or a group of writers in the 6th century BCE, and that writer or group of writers was writing in exile. But we don't need to get into that so much as the fact that this writer was responsible for a lot of material in the first 5 chapters of books of the Bible. And you can, if you get to know the distinctive vocabulary of this writer, known as the priestly writer, you can actually pick up where the priestly writer is writing. And it's called the priestly writer because they have a lot of concern when you isolate their distinctive writings in the Pentateuch. You can tell that they have an intense interest in the religion and spirituality of Israel, and they're the ones that give us all those begats. Genesis 1 is kind of like this begat. But the interesting thing is that if you just take all of that priestly material as a whole, like it was written as one book, it begins with creation and it climaxes with the creation of the tabernacle in the wilderness when Israel is between the Exodus and the Promised Land. That's in Exodus 31 through 35, and then it picks up again in 25 through 30, and then picks it up in 35 to 40. Anyway, it's a lot of chapters in the Exodus. But bottom line is, if you read the story of the construction of that tabernacle, which is essentially this tent shrine in the wilderness, it was movable, where God meets with humanity, it sounds like you're reading Genesis 1, except it's a lot longer. For instance, when Moses is given the command to build a tabernacle, first you got this idea that Mount Sinai was covered in God's glory with this mist, this thick fog of glory for 6 days. Then on the 7th day, God calls Moses into that cloud to reveal the plan for the tabernacle. Does that sound like anything?
Yeah.
6 days, 7, and then what happens is it's that God gives this extensive set of commands in how to build and how to weave everything about the tabernacle. I mean, the detail is just excruciatingly painful to read at times. But the plans that were laid out by God to Moses, in Exodus, are divided into how many parts? 6 days of creation, and then 1 day of consecration, and then you get another 5 chapters of them actually doing this, and that's broken down by 6 days, 6 segments of saying, hey, they did this, and Moses said, hey, that's pretty good. Then they did this, and this, and Moses says, hey, that's good. And at the end, Moses looks over everything and says, hey, this is really wonderful. And then on the 7th day, they bless the tabernacle. But one of the other curious pieces of it is that that relationship is, there's this one term that begins in Genesis 1, you find in Genesis 1, which is the Spirit of God that hovered across the face of the water, or the wind of God. It's Ruach Elohim. Could be either one. That term is a technical term according in this priestly vocabulary. It's only used one other time in the priestly writing, which is when God, Moses says, well, this is all great, but who's going to build this thing? And God invests this one person named Bezalel, a craftsman, with the Ruach Elohim, which makes him super intelligent and super creative, and is so creative that he knows how to create everything about the tabernacle, and he's able to instruct others in the creation of the tabernacle, all because of the investiture with the Ruach Elohim. And so here you have, just like in creation, God says not simply let there be one thing and there is something, God says, let there be a tabernacle, then God is empowering others to create this thing, and then empowering others to empower others. So why would the two be related then in the priestly understanding? I think would be a good question.
What a good question. Why are the two related, Eric?
I'm really glad you asked. That's an outstanding question. I was just thinking about that. I think that if you look at Genesis 1, you have the creation really of an ecosystem, which is really a set of very well-ordered and empowered relationships where each exists in a mutually fructifying way for the whole. But there's also, in Genesis 1 already, we have the suggestion of a social system. Even the purpose of the sun, moon, and stars is to mark out days and seasons and the festivals, and we have God stepping back and evaluating the creation every day. That's a social kind of thing. We have several times God naming things. There's another social thing, and at the very end, everything is working so seamlessly that on the first Sabbath, actually, none of us rest. God rests and watches everything else. Then this created order working together in community with each other. So already you have an ecosystem, but you have a suggestion of a social system. When you get to the tabernacle, you have this incredible social system that harkens back to the ecosystem. A social system is actually working exactly like that ecosystem. And so the priestly understanding, the tabernacle stands at the intersection between faith and culture, where we go, that allows, we have the tabernacle being built and reflecting what it's like in creation, both materially and socially. And when that happens, it is believed that God's presence fills the tabernacle. In Exodus, it's a tremendous scene about the glory of God descending upon the tabernacle and the amazing things that happen there. When the social and the ecosystems are allowed to function as they're created to be in mutually fructifying and empowered relationships that are mutually dependent and work towards life, then God is most fully present. I think the priestly writer is also trying to suggest that creation itself is an act of worship, and worship itself is an act of creation. That when we set things in right order between ourselves and with the earth, that is a profoundly worshipful act and a creative one.
Well, it makes for a wonderful article. Thanks for sharing that with us. We had some questions about where free will fits into all that, but perhaps we can get back to that in our second discussion with our folks. But we are doing stuff a little bit differently this series. And we're introducing a new way of doing the Numa Divina. So can I ask you to help us explain what that's all about?
Absolutely. There's a very strange coincidence of timing here, and it's truly a coincidence, although, looking back, who knows what subconscious themes were going through that. But 2 years ago, I was, just before Darkwood Brew started, actually, it was a little over 2 years ago in November, I was up in this very area trying to kind of conceive of, how are we going to format the program, and was reminding myself of, when we all got together, say, what is Darkwood Brew going to be, and how is it different from everything else that's out there? One of the things that we said we really wanted to happen was that we're not trying to simply impart information to viewers. That television can do that, and all kinds of other places can impart information to viewers, and we can step in that stream, and yeah, it could be nice, but what is it really adding? Well, it's adding a little bit more information, perhaps. But we could do more than that with the power of the internet, and also the power of the fact that we don't have to, it doesn't cost us millions of dollars every episode to fund Darkwood Brew. So we can pretty much, with a little bit of funding, we have the freedom to do something, just simply say, hey, what's right? What works best, not worry about what will draw funding or what have you. And one of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to figure out a way that we could, for the first time in human history, gather the world together in such a way that if you came to Darkwood Brew, whether you're sitting behind a computer screen or watching it over a flat screen television being streamed over the internet, something might happen while you're watching. Literally, an experience of God in some way, of the Holy Spirit. That it wasn't just simply about getting information, but was actually structured in such a way that opened a person a bit more than they are normally to experiencing the Spirit. And once in a while, God might actually connect in such a way that they perceive. and the Darkwood Brew would be a help then, not simply of getting great information, but also actually literally helping us on our spiritual path. And we thought that over time we've kind of experimented with different ways, and that's why we have this Pneuma Divina. But we thought we really haven't given the Pneuma. It's kind of like the Pneuma is like a Ferrari in terms of us helping us connect with God. But so far we've been using the Pneuma only like to run to the grocery store and back. We really haven't been tapping into its full power. And why? It's because we've been giving a lot of great information, and that's kind of boxed out the time for the Pneuma. What we wanted to do is, and this is kind of getting back to what I was writing about 2 years ago even, trying to formulate Darkwood Brew, was use the Pneuma as a way of really helping open us all to the Spirit in profound ways. And so tonight, what we're gonna do, and for the rest of this series, and then if it works, we'll continue, is we're going to give the Pneuma a bit of breathing space, and we're going to actually take a full, now don't turn off your computer yet, 8 minutes for the Pneuma reading this evening, although it's going to happen in a way that's different than you're used to. It's going to happen actually closer to the way it was developed over 1,500 years ago. We're going to hear the reading twice. After every 2-minute mark, we'll hear the reading again, and there'll be a suggestion about something to focus on during that 2 minutes. So the first time you hear it, what you're going to do, just going to give you the lay of the land beforehand, is just simply hear the passage and just simply try to understand what the passage is saying. Just kind of chew on. This is the most intellectual, logical part of the Pneuma. You have a couple minutes just to say, what is this passage trying to say? What's the message of it? What's the meaning of it? The next time you hear it, you'll have 2 minutes to simply you find that word or phrase that stands out. Now we're not looking for an entire verse necessarily, but simply a word or phrase. Once you've found that word or phrase that simply has intrigued you, and it may intrigue you for no reason that you can know, just simply it stands out, focus on that, and think about everything you can think of in life in relation to that word or phrase that stood out. So if it's like, let there be light, then think of all the ways light permeates the world and your experience of light, every way you possibly can over the next couple minutes. And then the third time you hear it, then we ask you to put that word or phrase into conversation with a question you have brought to the Pneuma reading. So if you will, at this point, if you haven't already, think of a question that's nagging you. You want to do this before you do the Pneuma reading. What's a question, what's the latest question that's really kind of, you could use some insight on? Well, during that third segment, put that word or phrase in conversation with that question. And then finally, the fourth time you hear it, you may be so deep in conversation about that in that third move that you may want to just blow off what we ask you to do, but in that fourth time is your chance to then make any decisions. Like, what did this conversation imply about how I should be acting or taking my next step? So that's in short what we're trying to do. Is what we found is when you actually give people time to experience the Pneuma in a way that it was meant to be, it gives you a chance to stretch out and to open up. It goes beyond like, okay, I'm going to watch a screen, I'm going to just be intellectually engaged. Now you might want to just close your eyes. And there'll be music going on, but you may just want to do that or see the scripture as it goes by. But really try to enter into this in this exercise deeply and give it a chance. And something may not just zap you like lightning the first time, but I can guarantee if you'll give this practice a run for its money, so to speak, it will.
Well, over the next 7 weeks, we'll have a chance to experience this more and more.
It's like 7, yeah.
And we'll be right back to work with Genesis 1 through 5 with this new Pneuma process as we go. But we're going to turn it over now to the band and listen to our music feature as we start to formulate those questions in our mind for our Pneuma. Matt Wallace, what do you have for us tonight with the Brews Brothers?
Well, we're going to do a couple of Chuck Moronic pieces. The one we're going to do now for the feature is called Many Mansions, and we'll do Bless the Lord, My Soul a little later for communion. I want to introduce the band quickly. On the piano, Mr. Dan Cerveny. On the drums, Bob O'Bennett. On the bass, Ricky Williams. And here comes our musical feature.
Numa Divina. And remember, this is a spiritual practice and not just a head practice. So we're going to ask you to kind of sit up, take a deep breath, and let it out. And let away anything that might be blocking you from hearing those whispers of the Spirit within this process. We're going to repeat the reading of the scripture from Genesis 1 4 separate times with a little bit different suggestions for each one of the readings. And in this very first reading, what we're asking you to be looking for is to take in the passage as a whole, not necessarily to find any specific meaning, but what is it saying to you? What is the overall meaning of the passage itself? And just take it in as a whole. And we'll begin with Genesis 1, 1 through 5.
In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day.
Now this time through on the second passage, the second reading of the passage, what we're hoping that you're going to be looking for is the word or the phrase that stands out for you, that grabs your attention. Look for it in a way that has meaning for you, that is multiple times plays essential, whatever associations that you have with that word that kind of stand out for you as we read the second time through Genesis 1, 1 through 5.
In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day.
On this third time through the reading, we ask that you hold up the question that you had identified earlier in the episode alongside the phrase or the image that stuck out for you in our second reading. Hold those together and see how they inspire each other, how they inform each other.
In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
On this fourth time through, we'll ask that you seek any kind of actions that may be inspired from this exercise, that you note these quietly and ask the Spirit for guidance and help in any follow-through that may come from your spiritual experience in this exercise.
In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
Our spiritual experiences are ways for God to be revealed in the whispers of the Spirit. And we hope that these exercises, which we can experience together and celebrate together at Darkwood Brew during this series, are ways that you can connect with one another and with God in a way that we can share that experience that we have with one another in order to be that enabling spirit for others. Just as the creation enables the created to continue creating, perhaps that spiritual experience we bring with us through these kinds of spiritual exercises can then be ways that we can share the Spirit with other people and enable that spiritual experience to continue. Now I'd like to invite Eric Elnes to come back and join us once again as we talk about the spiritual experience with folks online as well as folks in the house, and how that Spirit has moved us through this Pneuma Divina exercise. Welcome back, Eric.
Good to be back.
How was the Pneuma experience for you? The Spirit moving over there?
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure how I'd experience that, given that I would, have such a role in kind of pulling this off, and I thought I'd be too worried about how everybody else's experience was. But actually, I found that flew by so fast, and also it actually provoked insight. I had expected it because my mind was so full of the mechanics of it, but yeah, I was actually thinking about that. What stuck out to me was the creating the light and the darkness, separating the light and the darkness, and we focus a lot on the light. But I was realizing that part of the question that I brought to the Pneuma was how to create more sense of play in my life, and was realizing kind of during the Pneuma experience that what really allows for play is more interplay between light and darkness. Like literally, you're taking more darkness time, and I don't mean like darkness like bad, evil time or sad, depressing time either. I mean darkness time like time in your life that's not subjected to the bright light of day, where you're thinking about stuff and strategizing and examining and all that, but rather that dark side, kind of like a walk in the dark wood, that is that kind of subterranean time, that is time simply for time's sake, rather than for purpose sake.
In 8 minutes, good job.
No, that was like 30 seconds of that 8 minutes. That's the way that Pneuma works.
It works. And we have some folks from the internet, we hope, that had some shared experience as well. Scott, do you have some discussion of that experience with the folks online?
Not necessarily about the Pneuma piece, but a lot of questions were generated over the course of Eric's conversation previously. And Eric, maybe you could address, how do you see the relationships that are created both in the story of creation and the construction of the tabernacle? What does that have to do with God being Elohim or Trinitarian? Actually, the Unitarian online asked about the Trinitarian nature of God, so feel free to jump in there anytime. But how do you see that all kind of working within the life and being of God, as well as in the world, in the systems, and so on?
Wow, explain the Trinity in relation to creation. Well,
no, you only got 30 seconds, brother.
Yeah. Well, I think that I like to look at it through the Trinitarian lens, which we're doing as Christians enamored by Trinity, is to acknowledge that God, in God's very essence, is a relational, within God's self, not even before God's creating us. That there is this relational quality to God, which is probably why love, which is the ultimate, I think, energy of God, is ultimately relational. And so within God's self, there is this need to reach out and to include in this circle of relationship. And so whatever God seeks, whatever God creates, my assumption would be that God seeks relationship with. That's why a lot of times in my own native tribe of liberal progressive Christianity, it makes me crazy when we speak about a loving God who loves everyone, but then don't speak about a God who seeks actual personal relationship with us. We're very quick to talk about a God who seeks relationship in community with the wide community, and I affirm that forever and ever, world without end. But to speak about a God who loves us without also speaking about a God who consciously is aware of us, who seeks relationship with us, is completely naive. We should either talk about a God who has no love, or talk, and then just kind of set everything up and set it to go, or we need to talk about a God who is loving, but then has conscious awareness and seeks to include us in that circle of relationship.
You have someone standing by to share their experience of the Pneuma?
Yes, Jerry has a question here in the room. Jerry?
Well, I guess my question is why can't we combine the appreciation or the comprehension of complexity of creation with the simplicity of faith? It's like the more deeply we understand it scientifically, people seem to turn away from the faith understanding of it. It doesn't seem like people have an easy time putting them together.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a question that we spent the entire last series trying to explore and develop. I think science, kind of modernist science, with a very mechanistic view of the universe, really did kind of separate us from this sense of simplicity and relationship. But I think that where science is going, and it certainly seems to be going in the future, and is very much here already, is also looking beyond those modernist mechanistic frameworks, and science is beginning to answer its own questions about the existence of God, or could there even be possible a God that's consciously aware of us? Well, if you take it if you look at the scientific story of creation, it's so wild and bizarre. We would never think about that in our own minds, and yet it's founded with great data. Big bangs and supernovas and black holes and all this. That the idea of a God that would be consciously aware of us and seek relationship with us is really not so bizarre. And especially if you posit that science knows there's 8 to 13 at least different dimensions, even to the world we know of. So I guess that would be my response.
That reminded me from the highlight from Grace Wolf Chase, who said that in the whole science exploration of what was going on in our last series, that God doesn't get smaller, but rather becomes even more awesome, becomes more open and more amazing to us, so that the faith element actually expands on our conversation with God, and that rather than contracting in. So yeah.
I noticed a comment on the online chat from Cheryl, what's her name, I thought was really, really interesting and insightful and kind of important, too, about, noting that, arguments about, right order and, creation have been used against oppressed communities like people of color, LGBT folks, things like this. And it's important to note that in any kind of creation spirituality, and Walter Brueggemann's really good at noting this as an Old Testament theologian, that any creation theology tends to be inherently conservative in the sense that it argues from, well, this is the way it was meant to be. This is the origin of it all. And so people will say, well, it's natural for there to be a separation between black people and white people or whatever. They'll base their arguments in creation. And so we always have to be suspicious about creation spirituality. Ask, and ultimately the line I would hold, besides does this look like Jesus, which is the number one line, does your creation spirituality, is it moving you to creating the very kinds of relationships that are envisioned in both the creation and the tabernacle? That is it empowering others to be co-creators? Is it creating relationships that are mutually beneficial and interdependent in such a way that promotes life? Mm-hmm. And arguments that discriminate against others, that lead to oppression, certainly don't. It would also imply, the tabernacle account would imply that social justice, the social system, healing the social system, is actually inherently part of healing creation and the natural world, that the two go hand in hand. If you're going to, wherever you see people who are oppressed, you find an environment that it's denigrated.
So in our environmental concerns in this particular series, that'll be one point that we can jump off from there and explore a little bit further in our next episode. You'll be back with us for that episode in-house, right?
That's right. Yeah, provided my plane gets there. Otherwise, you might have to host. I might just stay and ski a little in Bend.
Well, you've got a good reception. We'll bring you back in somehow. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
And we'll see you next week.
Look forward to it. All right.
Bye-bye. The relationship that God has with creation is an ever-present, expanding relationship with our Creator. And in all of those experiences that we have of the Spirit in the world, parts of God are revealed in all those experiences. And in this meal specifically, God is revealed through the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. On the night in which he was betrayed, our Lord Jesus took bread, broke it, gave thanks, and gave it to all to eat, saying, this bread is my body, given for you and for all people. Do this for the remembrance of me. And again after supper he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to all, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood, shed for you and for all people, for the forgiveness of sin. Do this for the remembrance of me. This shared meal that we have, we invite you to share with us with whatever you have at hand, whether it's juice or crackers or bread and wine or grape juice, and that you enter with us in a relationship that is reciprocal, that does have its source in the love of God. This is the meal of God, the gift of God to us in our relationship with all of creation. And we invite you to share with us the gifts of God for the people of God. Thank you to our Brews brothers for providing us with some wonderful music today and to help with that experience of our spiritual practices with one another. We thank you for being with us tonight as we kick off our new series on Earth as it is in Heaven. And we invite you to continually participate with us and with the United Church of Christ in their 4-1 Earth campaign that's happening all 50 days of this Easter season. So be sure and get online with them and find out ways that you can participate and record the hours that you're participating, and we'll report those hours back as we continue on with this series. Next week we welcome with us Reverend Megan Pritchard, who is a UCC pastor who ironically is now contracting with the national UCC to run the 401 Earth campaign. And we're very much looking forward to her insights into environmental advocacy as she works with this through her own spiritual practices. So until then, my friends, I invite you to be blessed by the God who we know most fully through Jesus Christ our Lord. May that God go before you. May that God go above you. May God go behind you to push you into places where you might not necessarily go on your own. To go beneath you, to uplift you and to uphold you, to walk beside you as your constant and strong companion, and to dwell inside you, so that you know you are not alone, but loved. Loved beyond your wildest imagination by that source of love that enables all of us to love each other. And may the fire of God's blessing burn brightly upon you and within you, now and forever. Amen.